The sky rips over us as we drive out of the old familiar, our parents' neighborhood and their old stuffy whiz, the beat-up old buildings that used to be something special, now lie as monuments to our society's collective sense of neglect and waste. We wait for the ocean, not to live there, but to make a day out of the experience like many others from more blue-collar zip codes like us. We packed a few things and stood on the beach so we couldn't take it anymore, as if we wanted to get our money's worth out of the sun and the sand. Then me and Francis drove around the hills to do some sightseeing. Maybe check out a few houses that we can't afford. It wasn't long before my dear fiancée, Francis, looked up at prices for some of the rooms and homes that we could afford nearby, and she stumbled onto a real doozy. You may think I'm a cynical guy, and you're right. In my life, there has never been anything that was too good to be true. If it looks too good to be true, then it probably is. And yet, here we are, a mere few hours later, and Francis finds this awesome one-bedroom studio apartment for rent, cheap in a valley nearby. The place even has its own lake. Of course, when it comes to a place like this, you start by asking yourself, why doesn't anyone rent this place? Like, is it the murder house? Will I get it cheaper because it's the murder house? I don't believe in ghosts, so I'm fine with renting the murder house. I just want it cheaper. Sometimes I just have too much time to think to myself. My line of inquiry is vague enough for the landlord's imagination to get piqued about my perception of his cell. He quickly and desperately shows me pictures of the ad and compares them to what we see. After all, what you see is what you get, right? As we tour the apartment, I get a funny vibe from the landlord who rents this place. He's a real tryhard, going all out with his fake smiles and phony laughs to be our friend. This is worse than being patronized. It's high-energy sales mixed with a pungent amount of desperation. Frances is the daring one who likes to bicycle down back alleys by herself. Of course, she gets to the point quickly and tells the man that she's concerned that the seclusion of the apartment may make it difficult to get the help we need when we need it. And for a moment, there is a lull of silence in our conversation. Me and Francis are left speechless at the sight of the pristine, calm waters surrounded by the torn-down ruins of other apartments. I think at this moment, we both truly coveted the apartment by the lake, owning the pleasure of being here for ourselves, mentally.
You want to hear a story about this lake?
He asked the open air, since every other human is preoccupied with the lake.
I'll tell you something that happened to me at this lake.
Then he continues without skipping a beat. What if I said no? I thought. Then he goes on.
I had a heart attack right here, and I thought I was going to die. With my last breath, I looked at the lake, and a human-looking shape came out of the water and touched me on the heart.
Wow, I thought, that sounds made up, but why make that up? So I asked him, hoping to draw a circle around the truth with more question. Why did you tear down the other apartments?
It seems like you'd make a killing renting out multiple units.
Frances added her 2 cents.
The lake doesn't want it. With all that beauty and tranquility, why would I destroy the lake? Instead, I took out the docks on the boats and the floating platform, and I expanded the lake. People come and go, but this lake should be forever.
He says, while staring at the lake, and see Frances look at him with admiration. And I know he sold her, which means he sold me too. In the end, we decide to be good stewards of the lake with a 3-month lease, just to check the place out. Like most good relationships start out, we tend to move around a lot. Anything to avoid living with my parents, or hers. God bless them all, but We work hard to have our liberty, and here we have our privacy and a nice view of the woods. Day 1. We're moving everything important to us. For me, my computer that I edit videos on so I could keep paying for this place. And her, all her bathroom stuff and her computers and cameras. She must be thinking the same thing as me. Gotta keep up. You wanna play with the nice stuff, you need to pay for the nice stuff. Day 2. Francis and I are moving everything we can't live without, but yet still need. Extra clothes, boxes of things we still want from our last move, and cleaning supplies. But now we're making pacts amongst ourselves to buy what we need with our moving fund. At this point, I realize our mutual access to the moving fund is inadvertently a test of our relationship. The test of trusting somebody with your money. Day 3. We committed to calling this our last day. If it doesn't fit in the car or her hybrid, then we officially don't need it. The artwork she created will get picked up by her sister later. While moving her stuff, I can see that the things which are important to us also define us. Without our things, it would be hard to believe we even exist. It's late afternoon, and the reflection of the sunset reminds me of why I'm renting this place. I still wonder what happened to the last people who lived here. When Frances emerged from the apartment, wiping sweat from her glowing brow, she intently marches towards the water with a smirk on her face while barely acknowledging me as she walks past. The burgers are almost done, I futilely say, and she throws off item after item of her clothes, stripping herself to her birthday suit before enjoying the lake more than I was just by looking at it. Frances swims free and fast as the water shimmers in the crystal clear lake. While on a dive underwater with her limited vision, Frances can make out sharp edges and hard surfaces of perplexed insight. Frances's bare cheeks glow in the afternoon light while in focus in the viewfinder of a camera. From a high vantage point in the woods nearby, the camera rolls, and the eye of the lens wanders from Francis to David at his barbecue and back again. The landlord, satisfied with his camera angle, tightens up his camera rig and walks away while the red light flashes record, and Francis is in frame. After walking away from his observation area, the landlord tours his gallery of lost possessions in a makeshift cellar filled with his filth, clothes, and equipped with a makeshift bathroom and shower. INVIDEO, Frances' makeup is well done, as expected of her, and her skin shines in the three-point lighting of her home studio setup while I finish up an outtake cut for her next video. I wish I could have recorded her swimming, but she would never do that. I don't edit video because I don't have a face and body like Frances's. I edit because Frances hates editing, and I love her, so I need to love editing too. I'm going hours into this, studying my dear Francine, frame by frame, sometimes gauging whether her smiles and laughs are real, shot by shot. After a while, you get to the point where you know what things like the background look like, and what does and doesn't belong. By the end of my editing, a shadow figure outside my window is consuming all of my attention. Is it just a play of shadows, or something in the background? Questions bounce through my mind like rubber balls in a hallway, and like a child, I follow my curiosity without a single thought of harm. I get to the space outside the window, and I find footprints leading from the window to the lake. Now I'm officially freaked out. My first thought is, nobody else knows we're here, except one person. The drone flies high, with its million killer beep buzzes. This was one of the things I had to have here, my professional grade drone camera. I want to see how far a person would have to swim if they crossed the lake. I didn't tell her about the footprints, since there's nothing I could do about it. Yet I told her I'm just shooting B-roll footage in case she wants it later. It's not long before I'm left in shock. I can clearly see a structure under the lake, and I can see that it continues under the ruins of the old apartments. By now, I'm curious as to what lies in the woody hills around us. And as I take my drone to the far edge of the lake, I get a phone call from the landlord. I start off the phone call by telling him about the structures that I was seeing under the lake and how it looked like it went under the old apartments. When he cuts me off and tells me about some special tool of the garage used to get into the attic, he piques my interest and he tells me I could have whatever's up there. I forgot all about the drone during the phone call, but when I started talking about the footprints, he cut me off again and told me I shouldn't swim at night because, and he quotes,
You don't know where the bottom is.
While up in the attic, I find leftover items from the previous tenants under a hazy blanket of dust and cobwebs. There's not much, but the gem of this collection is a VHS tape I find in a cardboard box. I watched the video of a happy family no more than 1 year ago enjoying the lake. It reminds me of when I was young and carefree. I also think about how Francis makes me feel that way sometimes, until I see something that startles all comfortable thoughts out of my mind. That's like good stuff. With the software I got and my editing skills, I expertly enhance the video, and I'm reminded of the horror that brought me here. The same shadowy figure in the background looking right at the camera. I don't know how I'm gonna sleep tonight. I'm shaking and sweating as I look up ancient relics under the guise of editing. This is my final act before having to worry Francis over the thing. Just when I think I'm in the clear, Francis surprises me and asks me about my research after seeing images of pre-Christian religious symbols. This is where I tell a selective truth and tell her that Vikings were said to have once lived in the Americas. Nobody knows where they vanished to, but some of the glyphs for the structure on the lake are of an ancient temple dedicated to the thought of the underworld. I say, hoping we won't have to start packing tonight. To my surprise, Frances laughs off my observations as paranoia. She even reasons that there's still no evidence that Vikings have made it to California, in which she's right. Being wrong for once has brought me comfort, and seeing her this defiant to the dread that I've feared for days is inspiring. I feel like I could tell her anything. She always has to beat me to the breakfast table to have something ready. I know she doesn't like to get up early, so I know she only does this for me. Because she loves me, she finds a way to get up and go. In the kitchen, where we share an unspoken truce to never hold back at our dinner table. An example we want to set for our children, if we have any. Here I tell Frances about the recurring dream I have periodically, which I've kept for her. What I can remember is that you always sleepwalk into the lake, and I end up following you into a dark realm of strange living creatures. That's why I've been taking the sleeping pills, so I don't remember my dreams and I just sleep. I feel like I'm trying to sell her on my new dependency. I see my words washed over her by her eyes and somewhat pale expression, and I know my words made an impression. It is now that I lie my darkness at the feet of my dear Frances and strip myself bare of my fear and anxiety. She destroys my world with a silent gesture. Frances turns around and shows me a drawing of a dark figure that I'm all too familiar with already. The same dark stranger from my editing bay in the back of my mind. She then tells me she's been having dreams too. Frances suddenly awakens from a nightmare in a cold sweat. And after subtly trying to wake up David, who's sleeping like a stone while on a sleeping pills he's developed a habit for, Frances decides to go for a walk. The refrigerator door closes, and Frances looks to the bedroom for a second, hoping David will be awakened as she gets some milk and cookies, then walks back towards the bedroom, where she suits the tool to get into the attic, which piques her interest. Frances warily creeps into the attic and notices David's equipment and trone when she turns on the lights. The knowledge that David has been up here and said nothing negative about it empowers her to explore the dusty and cramped space. Frances feels her inner child's curiosity in her, and she feels compelled to look out of the vent folds of the attic and see how far she is from the ground. As she gives in to herself to look out the window, she remembers all the times she was a little girl and she was never allowed to play in the attic. Through the slats of the ventilation, Frances is shocked to see a little girl looking at the lake that looks just like she did when she was young. Then she sees the girl look at her, almost reading Frances's thoughts, and then the girl walks into the lake. Frances is shocked by what she sees, and in a moment of panic, she dashes out of the attic and swiftly runs out to the lake. In her heart, she has to disprove herself as crazy. She has to prove that she was just too tired, and she makes her way out of the apartment to the lake. A hand is seen by Frances rising out of the water and slowly descended back into the water, almost as if saying goodbye to her. Frances is almost driven mad by fear and anxiety as she is caught in a dilemma to hurry and save the girl's life or wake up David and see if he can help. In this moment of panic, her mind goes to a dark place of time when her mother threw her into the water to teach her how to swim, and where she almost drowned for the first time in her life. And she learned to never trust anyone until she met David. It is her thought of doing what David would do that she remembers her courage and throws herself into the lake with all the confidence of her swimming that she learned in high school, sure that she can save anyone, including David. I wake up and realize Frances is gone. Not unusual, but normally the apartment is filled with the liveliness of her morning sounds. My need to use the bathroom forces me out of bed, and on my way, I build up the assumption that she has gotten up early to unpack more of her things in the attic, since the attic is still open. After finding her keys in the kitchen and seeing no sign of her making herself or me breakfast, I remember seeing the attic still open and briskly make my way up, with a sudden chill crawling down my spine, realizing how quiet and empty it is without Frances, until I hear a woman's voice echoing over the water. I rush to the shore of the lake, hearing an echo of Frances's voice. Then I swim into the crystal clear lake, where I could see Frances's phone at the edge of the structure under the water. Forgetting all fear, I desperately swim to the bottom, where I reach for the phone. Then a hand reaches back and it's Frances's, with her skin covered in scars and black veins, as she grabs hold of my arm with a deathly cold grip and screams through the water.
Come and see.
Then she pulls me through the dark hole where she came, which seals behind us. The landlord watches the lake next to his camera. Then he starts to have heart pains, and the camera begins to malfunction, almost with anticipation of his impending demise. An illuminated figure from the lake appears and approaches the landlord, then touches his heart. And then the landlord recovers from his heart pains. The spirit then tells him in a ghastly voice,
"The deal is still the same. For every 1 year of life they have left, I will give you 1 hour. I have granted you 45 more hours."
Then the spirit dissipates into glowing orbs and swarms into the lake. In the wake of the lake spirit disappearing and the calming of the water, the landlord is left alone with his thoughts, and he thinks to himself,
45 more hours. I must rent again.